Hello, I'm Dan Packer, and today, October 22nd, 2002, we're here at the Plymouth Historical Museum in Plymouth, Michigan. We're here to interview one of our local veterans, George Kazmierczak, and he's here today to talk about his story and his experiences in World War II. Good morning, Mr. Kazmierczak.
Good morning.
Mr. Kazmierczak, for the purposes of simplicity, I'm going to call you George.
That's fine with me.
Okay, I appreciate it. Mr. Kazmierczak, George, if you would please tell us, what did you do before the war?
Before the war, well, I was in high school when World War II broke out. And during the summertime, when between my 11th and 12th grades at high school, I got a job at a defense plant. I was running a machine, I was a grinder.
Where was that at, sir? And
it was a company called Aeronautical Products. It was in Detroit. And I worked there for the summer months. Well, my father got used to my nice paycheck when I was working, so when I quit to go back to school, he wasn't too happy about that. So he kind of put a lot of restrictions on me, so I quit high school and I went to work. I worked at Aeronautical Products. I would have been graduated in June of 1943 from high school, but I had quit in 1942. A lot of my buddies, after they graduated from high school, they're all going into the service. So I decided I'm not going to stick around by myself, so I volunteered for induction, which I had a deferment because I was doing critical defense work. So they said, you don't have to go. Well, when I volunteered for induction, I didn't know that, but that negated my my deferment. So I went to the Army in July, and I swore in, and I went to active service in August.
When did you hear it? For the purposes of people that are going to look at this in the future, can you tell us your experience upon hearing about, I guess, the first inkling of war with Pearl Harbor, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was in the movie theater on Sunday, December the 7th, when they shut the projector off and they made an announcement that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Well, I was a young kid at that time and I didn't know much about world geography, but I said, well, I don't know where it's at, but it must be pretty bad. So they also made an announcement that any serviceman report to your bases immediately. Well, after the show, I went home and my parents were upset about it. My father, he was gung-ho, he wanted to join the Army. But then I found out that Pearl Harbor was in Hawaii. And later on, I did quite a bit of reading when I was in high school. I always read the newspapers. It sourced a lot of information for me. And that's when I found out about where it was and what happened and the implications and stuff. So that's how I got introduced to World War II. So I went to high school, and this was matter of discussion, a lot of our classes about the war. We had, of course, we all know about rationing. Meats and butter and sugar and things of those natures were in pretty short supply. You had to go and get a ration stamp if you wanted meat, if you wanted butter. Gasoline, you had a sticker. Of course, I didn't have a car. My father didn't have a car. But you had A, B, and C stickers, and the type of sticker you had would designate how much gallons of gas you were allowed a week. So I think it was the A sticker was only 4 gallons, B was a little more, C was unlimited, but those were given out very, very rarely. So after I went to school, we were kind of getting on into war. Everyone's kind of fighting, everyone shook up.
Sure.
We had blackouts and brownouts, and we had...
what was that caused by? The blackouts?
Okay, what happened, they would simulate a bombing conditions. You don't want to you don't let up the cities to give the enemy bombing targets and stuff, so they shut the lights off. And
everybody did this?
Everybody did this. You had to pull the shades down in your house. You couldn't show no outside light. And each neighborhood had a warden, area warden, and he'd go around and watch it. If he saw light shining out of your house, he'd pound on the door until he shut the lights off and pull the shades. So there was, when the war first started, everyone was very apprehensive about it. But later on, they kind of eased off. Then we had, I remember bonds. They were selling war bonds. If you 10 cents, you got a stamp. and you got a card, you filled up $18.75 for it, you got a $25 bond. I never participated in that. I was lucky just to have a couple of cents in my pocket to put 5 stamps. But all in all, it was not that tough. It was a little bit of a hardship, but
everybody's doing it, though.
Everybody's doing it, so everyone in the same boat. So it wasn't as if you were just being singled out. Right. And we accepted that. So, well, like when I volunteered for induction, my parents were pretty much upset about it, but I was 18, and I didn't need their signature or their permission because I was of age. So I volunteered for, well, first I went, when I was 17, I wanted to try to enlist in the Air Force. And I went to Suffolk Field and I took a physical. Well, first they gave you a test.
Right.
I took the test and I passed the test, the exam. They gave me the physical, and just so happened that particular day, the very first test they give you is your eyesight and a colorblind chart you have to read. The sergeant in charge of that wasn't there at the time. He had something else to do, so they told me I'd have to take those tests later on. So I took all the tests, and I passed them all, flying color. Took the eye chart, read it, no problem. He brought the colorblind chart up in front of me, and I was colorblind.
Right. First time you knew that, then?
I didn't know that. So they rejected me because I was colorblind. I said, what's the difference? They said, well, you got colored lights in the cockpit of an airplane and all this kind of stuff, so but I can tell colors, but when you put those in what they call the Itachi, the round circles with the numbers in them, out of 36 charts, I read one. There was a solid red and a blue background. All the others, I was reading all kind of numbers. And this sergeant was checking me. He says, "Kid, I'm sorry." I said, "But we'd like to have you, but we can't take you." So I was kind of dejected about that. But when time came, when all my buddies were going, I decided I'd like to stand around it myself. So I volunteered for induction. I was sent downtown. I forget where, but it was a big. There was about a couple hundred of us had our physical the same day, and I passed that with flying colors, no problem. And then I was selected to go in the Army. You could have chosen some of your branches of service. You could have taken the Navy, Marines, or Army. Well, I really wanted to get in the Navy, but the girl I was going with at that time, she didn't like the sailor uniforms. So I said, okay, the heck with you, I'll go in the Army. So I did. Well, I tell you, I could have out many times when I'm overseas in the infantry. So I could have been on a nice clean ship. But after things worked out, it wasn't that bad. So I was inducted and sent to Fort Custer.
Where's that at?
And right outside of Battle Creek, Michigan. And while I was there, they tested me. I played saxophone and drums in the high school band and orchestra. So they tested me, and they said, "Hey, you're pretty good, so we're going to put you in a band." And he told me, he says, they're forming a new armored division in Camp Perry, Ohio. So that's where we're going to send you. You'll play in a band there. Well, what happened was about 4 or 5 weeks later, I come back from the pass, and Monday morning, what they hollered at Fort Custer, when you ship you out, they holler bingo. So I'm laying in my bed, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, the sergeant comes up, shakes me, says, bingo. So, okay. So we got out, they took us to breakfast, they lined us up, and we went out and we stood by the rail line till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So finally we boarded the train, and I told him, I know where we're going to Camp Perry, Ohio. We got on board that train early evening, and we started going. Camp Perry, Ohio, figure 6, 7 hours, but all of a sudden we're going into the night and all that kind of stuff. 2 days later, I end up in Fort McClellan, Alabama. I get off the train, and this sergeant says, "Welcome to Fort McClellan, Alabama, the Infantry Replacement Center. Welcome to the infantry." Yeah, I was
shocked, weren't you?
Oh, shocked. I'm not supposed to be here, you know. I'm supposed to play in a band, so give me a break. So
until the sergeant then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened? I was assigned, first of all, to a Company B, the 6th Battalion, which was a rifle training battalion. So I took 6 weeks of rifle training there, and then they called me, the company commander called me and says, we've examined your records, and we're going to send you to a communications company. So they sent me to Company B, 15th Battalion, and that's the picture I've got there.
Okay. We got a shot of that, Bob. This is your sleeping quarters, right? This is
this is sleeping quarters. We call them a hut.
Hut.
And the thing about it was, we were there. We started in September. We started training in September, but in November, December, the nights would get cold. Now they had that little pot-bellied stove there, and
that conical thing to the right over here.
There was two of one at each end of the hut. Yeah.
Okay.
So every now and then we burned soft coal, and soft coal leaves an awful lot of soot and residue.
Right.
So a lot of times you wake up middle of the night, the hut would be all full of smoke because the chimney was all plugged up. So we'd have somebody have to climb up on the roof and drop chunks of coal down the chimney to unclog the soot so the smoke would get out.
Wow.
But in spite of that, I was lucky. I was in a hut with 15 other guys who, they're all various ages. So I was assigned to what they call the wire platoon.
Wire platoon?
Yeah. And due to the fact that I played in bands and marching bands, I had some marching experience. They made me a squad leader, which gave me a rank of a acting staff sergeant. So it had its advantages because if I ever pulled guard duty, I wouldn't have to walk a post. I would be made sergeant of the guard. So, and the other thing is I was right in the front row of the platoon. I was the squad leader of the fourth squad, the 4th platoon. It was my duty when we fell off Reveille, I had to take roll call of my squad, and when we have to announce if there are any absentees or absence from my squad, they would ask me if they're all present accounted for. If there's some issue, say Private Siegel, absent, and I had to have a reason why they were absent. And if it wasn't a good enough reason, then I was responsible for making sure that he was through Reveille. I had a problem with that because I had one man in my hut, in my squad, who felt he shouldn't have been in the Army, or at least not in the infantry. Well, the very first morning I stood Reveille, I said, mentioned that Private so-and-so was absent. So my platoon sergeant, where's he at? He's in the hut. He said, go get him. And I said, let me go get him. He said, go get him. I said, well, isn't that your responsibility? He said, no, you're the squad leader, that's your responsibility. He says, I said, what should I do? If you have to drag him out bodily. I said, you're kidding. He says, no. He says, you're a private. One private can do it, the other private. I can't do that. I can't lay a hand on him. Saw an out, and I tried to, rationalize with him and plead with him, and he wouldn't go out, so I grabbed him and I dragged him out. And he stood up. After that, I had no more problem with him. But this was some of the responsibilities I had. Also, if we did anything in the field, I was responsible for making sure that my men were paired up with pup tents, etc., that they a time for assembly and things of that nature. Well, while I was at Fort McClellan, we went out on 2 bivouacs. We had one called to Mooresville, which was all week. And then the second time we went out to Talladega National Forest. You've heard of Talladega, it's a racetrack now, but then it was just a small town in Alabama. But I was there about 3 or 4 days when I got called to company headquarters, and I was told they want you at the base. Well, I was on the boxing team at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and Joe Louis came to put on an exhibition. So they asked me to go down. I was gonna be on a card with Joe Louis to put on an exhibition not with him but with another.
Oh, okay. They're gonna pair you up with Joe Louis.
No, the GI. But there's a story behind that. When I went down to the gym to work out and get myself shaped up, and I forget the fighter's name. He was a black fighter from Detroit, and I knew him. right now, his name slips by me, but we talked, and we had a friend in common. He fought one of my friends, a guy named Russ Warsaw. And we talked about Russ Warsaw, and he says, come on, I'll introduce you to Joe. So he took me over and introduced me to Joe Lewis. And Joe Lewis said, well, how much do you weigh, kid? And I said, well, about 150 pounds. He said, can you move good? I said, yeah, I can move pretty good. He said, good. He said, I got Sergeant Robinson I spar with. He's so slow. You know when somebody's fast. We don't spar a couple of weeks, so I had the privilege of sparring 2 rounds with Joe Lewis.
No kidding.
And I put the helmet on and stuff. And he had the fastest hands I'd ever seen. He just was so fast. Yeah. And very gentleman, you know, every bit of gentleman, nice guy, no errors. Just a pleasure to meet him.
Hell of a boxer, huh?
Oh, yeah, he was one hell of a. As far as I'm concerned, there's nobody better than him. They talk about Muhammad Ali, and I just can't see that. I'm kind of disappointed because Muhammad Ali, I think, chickened out.
In the service, you mean?
In the service.
Yeah.
Joe Lewis didn't. He was right in the prime of his career, and he went in the Army, and he put on shows for the GIs like he did for us. So what happened was, a friend of mine, we were supposed to fight 2 different fellas, and we were given a meal ticket to go to the field house and get a meal. So we went to the field house, had a steak. While I was sitting there, we're talking. I said, boy, I said, you know, Larry, I'm in bad shape. My gut, you know, I have worked out. I hope that guy won't find my gut. So he said, well, don't worry about it, kid. What's that? And we go to the gym to get dressed to put on the exhibition. And the guy he's supposed to fight didn't show up, and the guy I'm supposed to fight didn't show up. So they said, we're about the same weight. He said, okay, Cass, you were Ted Lowry. He looked at me, and he beat my gut up real bad. And, well, he won. We only fought 3 rounds, but he won the decision. But I don't feel bad about that, because after the war, he fought for the light heavyweight championship of the world.
What was his name again?
Ted Lowry was his name.
Ted Lowry.
Yeah, Tiger Ted Lowry.
Tiger Ted.
So I didn't feel too bad about that when these are. So I wanted to stay on a team at Fort McClellan, Alabama, but at that particular time, if you were able-bodied infantry replacement, you had to go.
You're gone, right?
You were gone. So I finished up my basic training in December of 1943. I went home on a delay en route, they called. So I had to go to California to get on the way, so I stayed home for 10 days, and I shipped out to Fort Ord, California, which was a collection point for anyone going overseas.
And you were trained as what now? You're going in as what? An infantryman?
Infantryman. No, infantryman.
Just an infantryman?
Yeah.
Okay, but you were in a communications battalion?
Yeah, I was, well, let me digress a little bit, Jerry.
Sure.
The company I was in had 4 platoons. They had an intelligence platoon, radio platoon, a message center platoon, and a wire platoon. We each had about 48 men in each platoon. And we all had our own responsibilities. The thing I got a kick out of was that here, I didn't even know how to dial a telephone and make the telephone line. But my sergeant says, you don't have to know how to do that. We'll teach you all that kind of stuff. We're going to teach you how to splice wire, how to climb poles, and all this kind of stuff. So I finished up 17 weeks of that training. I was classified as a telephone lineman.
Telephone lineman, okay.
And then I went to Fort Ord, stayed at Fort Ord about 3 or 4 weeks, and then they shipped us to Camp Stoneman, California, Pittsburgh, California, and that was the port of embarkation. We spent about 2 or 3 weeks there. Then one morning, we were put on alert, so we had to be ready at a moment's notice. So one afternoon, I said, "Okay, this is it, guys." So they put us on a ferry boat. They took us down Stone River. They took us into San Francisco Bay. We got off that ferry boat. We got to the docks that we were going to be shipped from. And one of my friends that I took basic training with, Ford Wood, he was in my hut. Very good friend of mine. His wife was there to see him off, and Ford Wood didn't come back.
No.
he got killed in Luzon.
Hmm.
So, nice guy, but this was, I remember that because he was a good friend of mine and he didn't make it. So then we got aboard ship, the David T. Shanks, and we started, we didn't know, we knew we were going someplace in the Pacific where we didn't have the faintest idea. Our ship was on a zigzag course, it kept zigzagging, and we had one guy who made himself a sextant or something like that, you know, and he'd shoot the sun and the stars, and he'd give us a pretty good, not a good, but
an idea
of where we were going. And we found out that we were heading southwest. Well, where we're southwest, we didn't know. We crossed the equator, and that's when I turned from a tadpole to a shellback. They had an initiation. Whenever you cross the equator, if you're in the Navy or Army, they always have an initiation of some sort. So I was initiated when we crossed, and I can't find it. I got a certificate that I'm no longer a tadpole, but I'm a shellback. So we ended up in Noumea, New Caledonia, and I was sent to a replacement company there, just to wait for my further orders. So I was there for 3 or 4 weeks, and while I was there, I found out that they had boxing matches in Noumea. So I went down to the fuel house, and I spoke to a fellow by the name of Lee Ramage. He fought Joe Louis twice. And I told him I was from Detroit and all that, and he said, yeah, you got a lot of good fighters from Detroit. And I mentioned I was from Hamtramck. Well, that really lit him up. So I said, okay, you got to be a fighter. So he got me a fight. Well, the thing is, it was supposed to be an exhibition again. So I get in a ring with this guy, and it was going to be a 10-round exhibition. I'd never fought 10 rounds before in my life. But it was just supposed to be to put on a show. Well,
right.
Oh, you know, this guy could hit him at will. Every time when he hit him, I hit him. And after the second round, he got mad. The third round, he come out winging and said, well, the hell with this noise. So we went at it. Well, the first 5 rounds, I kind of had him, but then I got tired because he was used to. So after the fight, we almost had another fight. He was at me, and I couldn't understand what the problem was with the guy. So they broke us up. They made us take showers separately and all that kind of stuff. He wouldn't shake my hand. So a couple days later, I went down to the fuel house, and I kind of found out that he was the 10th ranking middleweight champ of the world.
Oh.
And he didn't like the idea of somebody like me, nobody
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, and then make him look bad. So he had to redeem himself. And
you got to his pride, didn't you?
Yeah, I got to him. So while we were there in the replacement depot, Eleanor Roosevelt came to Noumea, New Caledonia. She was on a world tour. Well, what happened the day she was supposed to come through Noumea, they took us out, and we had to stand colored guard on the streets while she'd be passing through. Well, what happened was it started to rain. Well, they had an open limo for her, but it's raining, and they didn't want to get wet.
Right.
So they said they got to get a command car. So by the time they got a command car and got everything lined up, this took a couple hours. We're out there in the rain, getting soaking wet, and she came by and just flew right by, splashed water on us. And they take us back to our company. We're kind of ticked off. Well, while we were there, they had a female dog in the company that gave birth to another female dog, and the female pup was appropriately named Eleanor. So, we waited there. You never got shipped out in mass. They called you out in maybe groups of 4 or 5, and they'd send you to a casual company.
A casual company?
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, that's just before you ship out.
Okay.
You're in a replacement depot where you get your orders. They send you to the casual company, which means you've already been assigned. Then they're going to send you to get attached to your unit. Well, I was in a casual company, and I didn't know where I was going at the time. All I knew was going to the 40th Division, but I didn't know what regiment or what. So they shipped me to Guadalcanal. And at Guadalcanal, they assigned me to the 640th Tank Destroyer Battalion, for rations, quarters, and transportation. So then I found out that I was assigned to the 108th Infantry, 40th Division, tank destroyer battalion. My regiment had already left the Guadalcanal. So they told me that I'd have to stay there until I meet up with my regiment on the island of New Britain. Well, the thing is, I got a big kick out of being on Guadalcanal because there was security. They had blackouts just like we had back, back home we had blackouts because of the war and all that. I'm on Guadalcanal. This place is lit up like Coney Island. I said, what the heck? Back home, people are shutting off the lights, you know, and here we're in a combat zone, and lights all over the place. So I stayed with the 640th till I was there about 2 or 3 months on Guadalcanal. Then we packed up and we boarded going from New Caledonia to Guadalcanal. I was aboard a ship called the U.S. Sea Corporal, and it was a filthy ship. And we had combat engineers on there, and the quarters were just horrendous. I was never so glad to get off a ship in my life. Now, contrary to that, when we got aboard the Adams, it was a clean ship. It was a liner before World War II, so it was well outfitted. It wasn't crowded or cramped as the Sea Corporal. Got to New Britain, and New Britain was we were on one end of the island, and the Japanese were on the other end of the island. And there was a big naval base called Rabaul that was on the other end of the island, and it was a Navy base and an Air Force base too. They ran bombing runs out of there. So we stayed there. We went on patrols. We lived in garrison. First, we lived in one part of New Britain called Borgen Bay. We were there for several months, and they took us around Cape Gloucester, and they took us down the southern part of New Britain to a place called Araway. Well, when we came to New Britain, my division relieved the 1st Marine Division. When we went to Araway, we relieved the 112th Cavalry. Now, the bad thing about New Britain was the conditions we had to live under. We had, first of all, we were concerned about scrub typhus, which is very similar to the Black Plague. And our main concern in New Britain was a disease called scrub typhus. It was spread by fleas that lived on the backs of rats. And we had an awful lot of rats. We used to have we made rat traps. We didn't have the kind that ever put a piece of cheese in. We took a potato can and we sunk it in the ground partially, made a ramp, and we had a wire hanging up with a piece of bacon on it, and the rat would go up the ramp for the bacon, trip and fall in the water that we had in this can. Well, if you were on rat guard that night, you had to get up, we had a forked stick and hold their head underwater till they drowned.
That's why we can kill them?
That's why we kill them.
How big were these rats?
That big.
They're big rats.
They're big rats. And it was nothing usual to get 13, 14 rats a night.
Oh, goodness.
So, and the only time we could tell when the rats were scarce, there were pythons in the area because they fed on them. So rats were pretty smart. They take off. But we went to Araway. We were there during the rainy season, the monsoon season, and we had rain like I'd never seen rain before. We had one day we had on our company street. On one side of the street, it was raining pitchforks. The other side, nothing. Well, taking a shower was kind of rough there because you had to float the water in and fill the barrels and things like that. So now this is an advantage to take a shower. So you stood the rain, walked out of rain, soaked yourself all up, stepped back in the rain, and rinsed yourself off. You had to use what was available to you. So that was we did that several times. Also, while well, at our way in the rainy season, there was times when all of our jeeps would get stuck in the roads. They made roads out of crushed coral, and when you put it in dry, it was pretty good. But once it rained, that coral turned to mush, and the roads became bad. So what we had to do, they sent us out, we chopped down coconut trees, and we lay the road with coconut trees and pour coral on top of it. Well, that helps some because you didn't sink all the way into the mud.
I see.
But while we were there, we went on what they call outpost duty. We went, they had a string of pillboxes, so to speak. Bunkers is what they were. And you'd have to spend a couple nights out in the bunkers and stuff to make sure if the NHS decided they were going to get rambunctious, that we would let everybody know, like a listening post. So then they moved us back to Morgan Bay, and we were told then we're going to invade the island of Luzon. But while we were there telling us about Luzon, they also told us that we were scheduled for the invasion of Japan, and that we'd be invading a small island, the southern island of Kyushu. We would land 3 days before the original landing as sort of a diversionary force to get them to move their troops to one side of the island and hit the other side. At that particular time, they told us the casualty rate would be very high. That 50% of us wouldn't live beyond the 3 days, and the other 50% would be pretty badly shot up. It was not a pleasant advantage or experience to have told you before you're going to go and invade something.
Give us a time period this is, George, when you're planning this invasion of Japan.
Okay, the plan, we were talking about that in, I would say this was about September of 1944.
Okay.
Where they're planned that far ahead of time. So, but then they got us all ready for the invasion of Luzon. We had got all of our booster shots, our tetanus shots, and all of that stuff.
Now, Luzon, for most people that don't know, is part of the Philippines,
It's
right?
the northernmost island in the Philippines. It's also one of the largest islands in the Philippines. It was the, if you've heard of Bataan Death March, Bataan Peninsula is on Luzon. So it's we were scheduled to invade the Lingayen Gulf on the 9th of January 1945. We had training. We had to go on water rationing hikes, water discipline hikes. We had to go out in the jungles and live in the jungles, get us conditioned, how to subsist on a little bit of water and K-rations and stuff like that. Then it was about November, they put us on LSMs, landing ship mechanized. So they took us and we went out into the harbor. We waited there for a couple of days. Then we took off for island. We went to the Admiralty Islands, and they disembarked us on an island called Los Negros. And we went to Los Negros we were attached to the 22nd CB Battalion, just for rations and quarters. While we were there, we were supposed to learn how to disembark off the ship, go down the landing nets and into the
beach area?
Beat the landing craft and how to rendezvous and all that kind of stuff. Well, when we first got to the CD Battalion, their commander, who was a Commodore, he told us in no uncertain terms that they lived a life of Riley. They had electric lights in their tents, they had mattresses, they had their own, they got 3 cans of beer a day ration, they had their own ice cream parlor, and he told us that this was not available to us. So our company commander went to the Commodore and said, look, my men are going to go crazy here, laying around doing nothing. I don't know how long I'll be here, but if you've got something that we can help with, some kind of work, project that we can do, be more than happy to volunteer my men for it. So he thought about it and said, okay, we have what they call tropical hours here. You never work more than 6 hours during the daylight because it got so hot. So they put us out. We worked to the CBs, shoveling, digging, things of that nature, which in the infantry you got to know how to dig. So anyhow, after doing about 2 or 3 days, he called us into the mess hall and he said, "You're all given a chit that entitles you to 3 cans of beer and you go to the ice cream parlor." So he kind of changed his mind about that. While we were there, I went up with a fellow by the name of Kowalski. He was a medic. He's from Chicago, and he took real good care of me. I was introduced to cigars. I started smoking cigars, and he got me cigars. And then our last night there, they had threw a party for me, and I got bombed on medical alcohol. Next morning, I'm sleeping, and my first sergeant is, I wake up and there's no tent. They took the tent down around me because I was so bombed. He shakes and says, "Get up, see a bum. You get the hell out of here. We're going to board the ship." So I got up, and they took us. We boarded a ship called the USS Cambria, and this was manned by U.S. Coast Guard sailors. So we're in the chow line, and some guys holler, "Hey, anybody here from Hamtramck?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from Hamtramck." All his buddies said, "Holy crap, you finally found somebody from your hometown." So I didn't know him then in high school, but we became friends aboard ship. Sure. And he got me a good job on KP. I got a permanent job on KP, which I was all through my duties in 3 hours. My job was, I went into the freezer, and they gave me big blocks of butter, and I had to cut them up in pads, with the little pads.
Yeah, sure.
So I was all through in 3 hours, so I had the rest of the day to myself, and not for about any other duties, because my first sergeant didn't assign you to 2 details at the same time, so I got off pretty good there. And he took me, he worked in the engine room, and his name was Frank Grella. He took me down to the engine room, and he showed me how the screw was turning, and they had a big tachometer, and he'd get his orders. He had to keep it so many revolutions per minute. They had coffee all the time. If he was on a night crew, he had coffee all hours. They had donuts for him. It was quite an experience. I saw how the ships run.
Right.
But I was also assigned to a gun crew, and I was a machine gun, a 50 caliber machine gun. We had to go on deck when there were any Japanese planes going to bomb. Well, the first couple we were aboard that ship, about a week or 2, were pretty uneventful. But we started getting in close to the Philippine Islands, and we started getting raided. Well, we had a heck of an experience for it, because these Zeros, they're flying just above the water, and they fly by that ship, and I'm on a machine gun, and looking at it, it's gone. You can't trail it or nothing like that. So then they told us, don't try to trail them. Just pick up the elevation they're flying at and shoot. Let them fly into the bullets. So we did that. That's why I get a big kick. You see these movies, these guys, these planes going 20 miles an hour, the guys tracking it. It don't happen that way. Yeah. So we got into Lingayen Gulf. We're getting ready to disembark when they saw in general quarters, and there was Japanese suicide boats in the area.
Boats?
Yeah, they were ramming ships, and the ship next to us got rammed by a Japanese suicide boat. Tore a big hole in the side of the ship. And the ironic part about it, the guys, most of the men who got killed, were not so much killed by the blast, but this ship had 5 bunks, 5 high. Right. The guys in the lower bunk were crushed, but all these bunks came down and crushed them. So that wasn't, it kind of shook us up, because this is a regiment from our division. So we got kind of shook up about that. But they finally lifted the general's quarters, and we got into the barges. We invaded Lingayen. It was unopposed. We had no Japs on it. And the funniest part about it, when we landed, we went into town again. We had a victory march, and the Filipinos were greeting us and cheering us on and stuff. It was a nice feeling. They are really grateful. They're happy to see us there. Well, we were in the same corps with the 37th Division, which was an Ohio National Guard Division. And then explain something about my regiment and my division. I was in the 108th Infantry Regiment. It was a New York National Guard Regiment. But it was in the 40th Infantry Division, which is a California National Guard Division. So how did this happen? Well, the 108th Infantry was originally in the 27th Infantry Division from New York. Right after Pearl Harbor was born, these guys were shipped to Hawaii. Now, they landed in Hawaii a couple days after Christmas in 1941. When I got assigned to that outfit in 44, these men had been overseas almost 3 years. No sign of going home. So the reason for that was the Army before World War II started had what they called square divisions. They had 4 regiments to a division. Then they decided to make them triangular. So it just so happened they took the 108th Infantry out of 27th Division and put it in the 40th Division because they lost one of their regiments to another division that they formed called the Americal Division. So it's kind of a funny mix-match there, but that's the situation. Most of the fellows in my company were from either Rochester, New York, or Syracuse, New York. We did have some Californians in there because through replacements and things of that nature. But that's the story of the 40th Division, the 108th Infantry. The 108th Infantry Division in World War I don't know if you ever heard of Fighting 69th?
Mm-hmm, sure.
That was a brigade. And the 108th Infantry was in the Fighting 69th Brigade.
Okay.
So they did have a distinguished record in World War I. Well, we went into combat with the 37th Division, and our corps headed south towards Manila, whereas the 43rd and 6th Division headed north to get into the mountains of the northern part of Luzon. We started south, and we saw very little combat till we reached San Fernando, and this is right outside of Clark Field. The 37th Division was held up because they brought in the 1st Cavalry Division, dismounted. We had to wait for them to catch up, and they both can have a race in Manila. We thought that's kind of unfair because the 37th been, in not necessarily combat, but they're under combat conditions for 2 weeks now. They're holding them up, and they're going to have a race. So my cousin, the 1st cousin, Frank Panley, he was in the 37th Division. He was in G Company, 145th Infantry. We stopped one night at a stream, and there were some guys on the other side of the stream, so I hollered over what outfit they were in. They told me G Company, 145th Infantry. So I said, hey, do you know my cousin? So I told my cousin's name, and they said, yeah. They said, we'll go get him. Well, when they went, he was out on patrol. So I figured I'd see him next morning. We got next morning, and they were gone. So I didn't get...
The whole unit was gone.
Pardon?
The whole unit was gone.
They all took off. So anyhow, we started to... They held us up at Clark Field. The 129th Infantry was just starting to enter into Clark Field. They pulled them out, and they replaced the 129th Infantry from the 37th Division with our regiment. And Clark Field was right outside Fort Stotzenberg in the Zambales Mountains. They wanted to make it operational, but the Japanese had anti-aircraft guns in the Zambales Mountains, and they could fire any planes coming into Clark Field. So we had to go in and get rid of those anti-aircraft guns so that they could make Clark Field functional. And that was our main concern, was securing the area around Clark Field. We were there for about a month and a half, and then they took us out. They relieved us with the 43rd Division after they brought them in to mop up. Then they sent us, my regiment, to Ormoc Leyte, which is on the western part of the island. We stayed there for replacements and rehabilitation and training. But while we were there, we had a lot of new recruits. We had to train them, work with them, get them in condition. But then they gave us an assignment to invade a small island called Masbate, M-A-S-B-A-T-E. Well, Masbate was it's called the Dairyland of the Philippines. They had a lot of cattle there. And they had intelligence reports that there was an airfield on Masbate and it was causing problems. So we went and invaded the island. Again, this is no, we weren't challenged on the beach. We just walked right in. We finally chased the Japs all over the island. We finally got them cornered. We're going to give them the coup de grace. They pulled us out and substituted the Filipinos guerrillas because they wanted them to finish them off and get combat experience. So they pulled us out. They sent us back to Leyte. Went back to Leyte, and 3 or 4 weeks later, they put us on LSMs, and we invaded the northern part of Mindanao. Now, Mindanao is the southernmost island of Leyte, and it's the second largest island. And right now, that's where they're having all the problems with the Muslims, because they had a big Muslim population there. They were called Moros. We called them Moros, and you had to be very careful because they weren't trustworthy. We were told not to go into the villages by yourself. Make sure there are at least minimum of 4 of you, and don't trust them. Don't do any barter with them or anything like that. So we stayed away. We invaded between 2 towns called Bugu and Agusan, and there's a road that ran south. We got on that road to make up a junction with the 31st Infantry Division coming up with the south. We're going to make a junction with a small town called Malay Balay. Before we reached Malay Balay, we did see some combat. We had some problems there, but that's when I got wounded slightly. So they sent me to a collecting company. This collecting company was the 31st Division Collecting Company. So while I was there, my wound was very superficial. I don't know why they sent me there, but there was a doctor who took pity on me because I only weighed about 112 pounds at that time. And I had jungle rot. My hands, my wrists on down were 2 big clumps of scab and pus. So he felt sorry for me. He said, I'll tell you what, kid, before I send you back to your outfit, I'm going to keep you for a couple of days. Let you rest up. So I stayed there for 2 or 3 days, and they came up and said, George, got a problem. We got to take care of our division first. And you're from another unit, so we're going to have to let you go. But I talked to a friend of mine who was in an evac hospital right across the road. And he said he'd take you on for a couple of days because there's nobody there. So, okay, so they transferred me to this evac hospital. And this doctor, he was going to do the best that he thought, so I was there for a couple of days, and he decided he's going to soak my hands in boric acid. So I soaked my hands in boric acid, and come to find out I was allergic to boric acid.
Oh, boy.
So now I'm running 104 temperature. I got a lump under my arm, secondary infection. And he says, I got to get rid of you. I can't keep you. I got to see you in a bigger hospital. So they put me on a plane, and they fly me to Tacloban, Leyte. Well, we were delayed because the airfield we were supposed to land on was delayed because there was a bombing mission taken off. So we had to land on an auxiliary field. So we were landing on this field, and this, by the way, this is my first airplane ride. And I thought it was going to last because as we're landing, those mats that you make the airfield out of buckled. And as he's approaching, he hit those buckled up, and the plane bounced in the air and wobbled all around and came down. I thought, God. So we landed, and due to the fact we didn't land at the airport, they had no transportation for us there. So the nurse in charge of our plane, this is a C-47, by the way, she said, okay, if you guys want, you can get off. So I got off the plane on a nice gravel pile. I laid down, I fell sound asleep. And she says, how can you sleep on this? I said, yeah, when the infantry, you used to sleep at anything, see. So she said, why don't you go back on the plane, back in the litter? I said, no, I like it out here. So I stayed there for a while, and then they brought ambulances, and they loaded us up in ambulances. And I was taken to a 76 station hospital. While I was there, I was in a ward that was strictly devoted to people with skin diseases. But it was also the VD ward. So I was on one side of the ward, and on the other side they had the VD patients. Well, the doctor, his name was Captain Sherman. He didn't treat these VD patients very kindly. When they'd come in for outpatient clinics and stuff to get their penicillin shots, he'd walk in and say, "Good morning, pigs." But he wasn't too well liked by these VD patients. But he couldn't do nothing for me. He worked on me, and he gave me all kind of, he put me on penicillin. I got 91 penicillin shots. I was given a shot every 3 hours, round the clock. So he told me if I missed one shot, I'd have to take a series all over again. And these were a series of 30 shots that he gave. Well, the first 2 series didn't work, so he put me on another. And the other part about it, they wrapped my hands, but the ward boys are not allowed to use any tape on skin patients. They had to tie them. And my hands were like big mittens. And then they give me a pan of pure penicillin. I soaked my hands in pure penicillin. Well, to no avail. Then they took me in an ambulance. They took me to 44th General Hospital. This doctor had a little more experience in handling skin patients and stuff, so he took over, and he cleared my hands up. And he cleared my hands, and he said, "Well, it looks like we got you on road recovery, but your hands are too dry now, so I'm going to put a ointment on your hands." When he put the ointment on, my hands broke out all over again. So he said, "I'll put you back on Castellanus paint," what he called to dry my hands up. So he put me on that. Well, again, my hands cleared up. They cleared up, and he says, "Okay, they're too dry, put the compound in." Again, they broke out. So he's shaking his head, "Well, okay, at least we know how to get rid of the scrub." So he put me on Castellanus paint, my hands cleared up. He said, "Well, George, if you stay this way for a couple of days, I'm going to send you back to your outfit." So I don't want to go back to my outfit. This is too good. So I'm walking around a carpool, and I see a guy working. He's working on a Jeep engine. "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going to overhaul this. I'll clean the parts." I said, "Oh yeah, I like to work on car parts." He said, "You do?" He said, "Yeah." "Yeah, can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, clean up these parts for me." So I put my hands in the gasoline. My hands moved out all over again. So the doctor said to me, "I don't know what I'm going to do." I said, "Send me home. You know, you're suffering from anxiety." I said, "We're all anxious to go home." So they took out the red pen. That's the magic pen. They wrote on my chart, "Evac to USA." So a couple of days later, they dropped the atomic bomb. And I was in the hospital when that happened. So they dropped the second bomb, and then they said, they're going to declare the war over. So that's how I stayed, and I was scheduled to go home before they dropped the bomb. But we had a party that night, the VJ Day, that was one to remember. We had a good time. Our ward boys, we had 2 ward boys who were not the nicest guys. What they would do, this is a 72-bed ward. So they'd turn in requisitions for patients, suppose that they had. Well, they turned up for 72, and it's only 60 guys that they got 12 extra cans of beer. So they took the beer and they put it in the narcotics chest. And my bed, right here, that file cabinet, is a narcotics chest. The VJ Day, we got a couple of cans of beer. So we drank up the beer, and they said, "Well, we're all out of beer." I said, "I know what it is, a couple of cases of beer." It's in a narcotics chest. So we broke the lock and took out the beer, and we drank the beer in the narcotics chest. So that was enough. Well, I had bumped into one of my company officers while I was at the hospital there, at the 76th Station Hospital, and he told me about a place in Tacloban where if I wanted to, in case you get out on leave, I know where you can buy some booze. So he explained how to get there, where the place is at. So now, I'm in my pajamas. The guys wanted some booze. I don't know where to get the booze. So they give me some money. I get the money and I take off and I get on the road. I'm in pajamas, I'm hitchhiking, and two majors in a Jeep. Hey, where the hell you going? I said, I'm going to Tacloban, sir. What are you going there for? Well, I know where to get some White Horse Scotch. Jump in, we need some. So I got in a Jeep and I took them there. They drove me there. I bought about 4 or 5 bottles for the guys at the ward. They bought a couple of bottles. I jumped back in the Jeep, dropped them off at the hospital. We went there and we really partied after that. So about 1, 2 o'clock, and we were all feeling no pain. We went to bed. In the morning, the doctor come in and the ward boy said, somebody broke your narcotics chest. So they asked me. I said, I didn't see a thing. This is kind of funny. You didn't see it. Hey, I said, well, let me tell you guys something. Go ahead, call the captain, said, I'll tell him you guys stored beer in a narcotics chest, which is a no-no. They didn't say a word about it. So
Let's cut it right there for a second.
Okay.
George, you brought some medals. We were with you today. Can you describe what you have first in your hand?
In my hand, that's my combat infantryman badge. Anyone who was in infantry and saw combat was given this badge. Now there's 2 types. There's a infantry badge which just has the rifle, but if you see the badge with the wreath on it, that's a combat infantryman badge. And they gave it that and tell you $10 more a month for pay.
$10 more.
$10 more.
And the next medal we have here?
That's my good conduct medal.
Okay, you get that after you're out leave service, right?
That is the Philippine Liberation Medal.
This one in the middle here.
And that's the Southwest Pacific medal.
National Defense Medal. These are your dog tags right
Yeah,
here.
my dog
Okay,
tags.
that's what they look like. I'll take a turn around here. I got a little Velcro on it.
Yeah.
But that's what that looked like. And right up here is
That's my divisional patch, the 40th Infantry Division.
40. Now you wear that on your shoulder,
On
right?
the shoulder, on the left shoulder, yeah.
On your left
And
shoulder.
it's worn diagonally. It's worn like this.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, like
Okay,
that.
like that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, like so. Okay, very good. Well, George, it's been really great listening to your stories and your reminiscences of World War II.
I
And
enjoy this.
we thank you for coming in.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
and those pictures there, if you want to.
We'll make copies of those.
Okay.
Or make